We have an active shooter.
Let's go ahead and declare this a mass casualty.
Welcome to Active Shooter, a podcast that covers the whys, the hows, and the aftermath of active shooter and mass casualty events.
They have an active shooter in the building. A second call says they are being attacked.
I've been shot. 16910 means we got shots fired. 4:15 a.m. Route 91 sounded like an automatic firearm.
Active shooter, reports of an active shooter
mass casualty incidents.
Thank you for listening.
You are listening to Active Shooter, a podcast that may contain adult themes, explicit language, and graphic depictions of violence. Portions of this show may be traumatic for those under 18. Listener discretion is advised.
This is an NBC News special report. Here's Lester Holt.
Good afternoon. We're coming back on the air with breaking news about that shooting at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas. NBC News is reporting, according to law enforcement sources, that there are multiple fatalities, and police say the suspect is also dead. There is, as you might understand, a massive police presence on and around campus. There is even a ground stop in place at the airport, which is virtually next door now. The university, with an enrollment of about 30,000 students, has closed for the rest of the day.
The UNLV shooting happened a mere 3 miles away from the location of the deadliest mass shooting in our country's history. The entire country watched the shooting at the Route 91 Harvest Festival at Mandalay Bay unfold before their horrified eyes. Now, 6 years and nearly 2 months later, we've experienced hundreds of shootings that have captured the nation's attention in the worst possible way. The shooting at UNLV was as unexpected as it was unexplainable. The shooter obviously had an issue with the university that he attacked, yet the issue was clear to no one except perhaps the shooter. We don't know precisely how planned or organized the shooter was, but in the mere 10 minutes he rained terror over the Beam Hall at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. He managed to cause a lifetime of trauma and unease for thousands of impacted individuals. Today's case is dedicated to the lives and memories of the 3 injured survivors and the 3 shooting victims: Patricia Pat Navarro Velez, Cha Jan Jerry Chung, and Naoko Takemaru. Active Shooter the podcast is a High Five Holly production, and I'm your host, JT. If you've listened to our prior episodes, you know that the Active Shooter podcast team has taken the No Notoriety Pledge, and we will not be sharing the real name of the shooters that we cover. We will be giving the shooters a pseudonym and refer to them by that name throughout the episode. This will help in clearing up any confusion in the story, while remaining true to our pledge and not naming the shooter by their actual name. We will refer to today's shooter as Aaron. Wednesday, December 6th, 2023 was a typical winter day on the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, or UNLV campus. Located in Paradise, Nevada, the campus was a bustling one, with about 30,000 students attending. The morning was pleasant with a temperature in the high 60s. The day was slightly overcast with cloud cover blanketing the sky before opening back up to offer glimpses of pure blue. The UNLV campus was busy with classes in full spring on that Wednesday morning. A little after 11 a.m., 67-year-old Aaron drove to his local post office where he proceeded to mail out 22 separate letters, each one addressed to a different university official, and each bearing no return address. From the post office, Aaron drove to the Frank and Estella Beam Hall, arriving at approximately 11:30 a.m. The hall was an instructional facility, which also happened to be the main building for the Lee Business School at UNLV. Aaron parked his 2007 Lexus, and at 11:31 a.m. security footage captured Aaron walking around his car to the passenger side, where he opened the door and pulled out a 9mm Taurus PT-92 semi-automatic pistol. He looked closely at the firearm before inserting it into the waistband of his pants and slammed the car door shut. Aaron walked purposely towards Beam Hall. He entered the hall at around 11:45 a.m. and strode towards the stairs and up to the 4th floor, where he walked to the end of the hallway and back down another staircase. Aaron wasn't just brandishing a gun, though. He opened fire immediately and continued to shoot aimlessly and randomly. Petrified students hearing the gunshots began to run and hide. Aaron paced several floors, causing panic, hysteria, and confusion. Victims and survivors were shot on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floors of the hall, including 39-year-old Professor of Accounting Information Systems, Patricia "Pat" Navarro-Velez. Pat, a wife and dedicated mother of 4, had studied Spanish and biology for undergrad before pursuing a master's degree in accounting from Bowling Green State University. She then worked in risk assurance at PwC, also known as PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is an audit and assurance consulting and tax service firm. During her employment at PwC, Pat earned her PhD at the University of Central Florida. Pat always knew that she was meant to teach and mentor, and that is precisely what she did, making a powerful impact on the lives of many of her students. The brilliant and caring woman, who loved to cook and spend time with family, will be deeply missed by many that she touched along the way. The first 911 call was placed at about 11:45 a.m. The caller reported a shooter in the Beam Hall at UNLV. Because there were several law enforcement units nearby when they were dispatched, the police response time was immediate. Police responded within 1 minute.
911 emergency. How many shots have you heard?
Like 5. I'm hiding under my desk. I closed my door. It's locked.
Have you heard anything else before or after?
I heard some screaming.
Okay. Who else is in the office with you?
It's just me. My boss is working from home.
It's just you and just yourself?
Yeah, by myself.
Meanwhile, as the shooter was moving up and down from one floor to the next, one student reported that they and approximately a dozen other classmates were inside of the journalism building when they heard the shooting. They barricaded the door as a steady stream of alerts began pouring into their respective cell phones. The alerts were brief, quote, "Evacuate to a safe place," and "Run, hide, fight." The students didn't know exactly where the shooter was, so they each used what may have been their last minutes to call family and say they loved them. The fear that such an act induces is utterly immeasurable. Another victim who was killed was 64-year-old Jerry Chang, a management information systems professor at UNLV since 2001. Jerry earned his bachelor's degree in oceanography from the National Taiwan Ocean University in May of 1981 before completing his master's degree in computer science from Central Michigan University, May of 1986. Jerry wasn't finished pursuing education, though, so he continued, earning an MBA from Texas University in May of 1987. He studied his way to yet another master's in management of information systems from the University of Pittsburgh in July of 1995. Jerry achieved yet another educational milestone in June of 2001 when he earned a PhD in management of information systems from the University of Pittsburgh. Dr. Jerry Chang taught an assortment of classes, including data communications, database management, and database design and implementation at both the graduate and undergraduate levels. Dr. Chang's students thought it was funny and endearing that their beloved professor didn't own a cell phone. He would always say that he had a phone in his office and at home, and besides, he believed people spent far too much time on their cell phones, neglecting those around them in the process. It wasn't the way the doctor preferred to live, and his brilliance and simple way of living will be missed by all. Inside of a nearby building, another student heard shots being fired, about 6 shots in total. She and the other students she was with all hid in utter silence inside of their classroom. Lights switched off and the door locked tight. Back inside of Beam Hall, 39-year-old Naoko Takamaru had been shot and killed. The compassionate professor cared deeply for her students and was known to insist on an open-door policy. She genuinely wanted each one to succeed and would do whatever it took to assist in that process. Naoko was in her 20th year with the university after having earned 2 master's degrees, one from Michigan State University and one from Monterey Institute of International Studies. She earned a PhD from Claremont Graduate University. Naoko began her American dream as a foreign exchange student in 1974, and the treasured professor will be dearly missed. Elsewhere in the hall, a sociology professor was listening to a student give a presentation when the screen inside the classroom flashed with an alert of an active shooter. Within moments, all students and faculty received the same alert to their cell phones and emails.
We were in the student union on the second floor, and we heard at the business building, the BEH on the second floor, there was an active shooter. We found out cops were on site, and we just sheltered in place until we were evacuated, and it took about maybe 30 minutes to get us evacuated.
Upon their arrival, police entered the hall searching for the shooter. When they encountered Aaron, gunfire was immediately exchanged, and police neutralized the shooter. It was later discovered that Aaron carried 11 magazines, which contained over 150 rounds, but he had only 9 loaded magazines on his person. Inside of the hall, an alarm started going off during the shooting, which caused serious confusion. But after hearing someone shouting that there was a gun, students and faculty faced the terrible realization that this wasn't a fire drill, or even a real fire. This was a shooting attack, and no one knew who was next. The entire shooting lasted about 10 minutes from start to finish. About 8 minutes after the initial 911 call, the university posted on their X, formerly known as Twitter account, that police responded to reports of gunfire and were urging students and faculty at Beam Hall to, quote, evacuate to a safe area. The events center at the university was established as a reunification center, along with the North Hall of the Las Vegas Convention Center, and an emergency hotline was implemented. Subsequent investigation showed that Aaron carried a list of individuals that he was seeking out during the shooting. None of those on his list were shot or killed, and police were able to intercept one of the 22 letters Aaron mailed before the shooting. There was an unidentified, unknown white powder inside the envelope. Later testing determined that the powder was indeed harmless, but the intent to invoke fear was very much successful. Eventually, law enforcement was able to collect each of the 22 letters, which seemed to call random professors or teachers degrading names and contained rambling thoughts of nonsense. One letter included the line, quote, "Good professors at top schools teach from their mind, lecture, and lecture notes. Only dumbasses instruct by reading off textbook pages and slides." While another read, quote, "You think your shit don't stink? But really you're stupid and incompetent. Most of your career, you're just a huge evil fuck-up." There were many other confusing, garrulous musings that filled the pages of each letter. Aaron was born in North Carolina in 1956. He worked for major corporations including giants like Volvo, Brown & Root, and Kellogg before he decided to pursue education. Aaron earned a Master's of Business Administration at Duke University in 1991, and then went on to achieve a PhD in Business Administration from the University of Georgia in 2002. While he was studying for his PhD, Aaron began working as an assistant professor at East Carolina University in the College of Business's Department of Marketing and Supply Chain Management in 2001. Aaron was a 10-year associate professor of business at ECU in Greenville, North Carolina from 2001 to 2017. When he left ECU, Aaron accepted a position as an adjunct professor of business at Roseman University of Health Sciences in Henderson, Nevada, from 2018 to 2022. During the time Aaron lived in Nevada, he applied numerous times at UNLV and even several colleges throughout the state. Aaron was in dire straits financially, and he was served an eviction notice, which had been prominently taped to the front of his apartment door. His LinkedIn claimed that he was a, quote, semi-retired professor and noted, quote, the greatest gifts and takeaways I possess from my many years within higher education are the many kind and positive comments students made regarding my instructions and disposition toward them. The page was removed after the shooting, though Aaron also maintained a personal website which detailed his travels and claimed that he made, quote, more than 24 trips to Vegas over the last 15 years. While he claimed not to gamble, Aaron was clearly captivated by Sin City. Several students even claimed that their professors seemed to have a sort of obsession with Las Vegas and an unrelated preoccupation with student feedback. One student said that Aaron was transfixed with Las Vegas, even spending the first month of the semester talking about the syllabus, while the balance of the semester, Aaron spoke almost exclusively about his time in the city he seemed to love so dearly. Aaron talked about the hotels he visited, shops he frequented, shows he watched, and even spoke of those whom he visited when there. The same student claimed, quote, if you can imagine a college class where you just relive someone's vacation, like that was kind of the class. It was all we talked about from the start of the class to the end of it, and further said that class was the most odd and unconventional one he'd ever taken. Aaron had a graduate assistant who worked for him for about 6 months in the fall of 2011. The student's name was TJ Strickland, and TJ later stated that Aaron was, quote, eccentric, but overall an incredibly nice guy. He said that Aaron was strict about his organization and email systems and expected everything to be done in a very specific manner. If you didn't get it right the first time or the second time, or any time, frankly, it needed to be completely redone. He was very particular, to the point of obsessively compulsive. One such example is when TJ had to print assignments and tests for students. If the tests weren't stapled in the exact fashion that Aaron wanted, everything had to be thrown away and done again, ensuring that the staple was placed just so. There was a shooting scare previously in 2011, but it turned out that the supposed shooter was only carrying an umbrella. Aaron later gave TJ an umbrella as a graduation present as a joke, which never appeared to bother TJ, and indeed, he was completely shocked when he learned that Aaron was the shooter. TJ had always believed he was a kind man who wasn't capable of such a horrific act. Another of Aaron's former students from ECU claimed that she was a mentee of Aaron's. She was taking online classes with him, but before long, Aaron started making advances towards the woman, which made her feel very uncomfortable, leaving her feeling almost preyed upon. One day, when she was physically on campus, she found herself in an elevator with Aaron. When she mentioned being one of his students, Aaron went out of his way to assist her in landing an important internship. He even helped write her resume and cover letters. However, after he helped, Aaron reached out to the student nearly every single day for the whole semester, and he even tried to give her gifts. By the end of the first semester, the woman was invited to Las Vegas with Aaron, and it was then that she chose to cut off contact. She was incredibly clear that Aaron never touched her inappropriately, nor did he act out after she ceased contact, but he still left her feeling uneasy. He dressed professionally and often wore very heavy cologne. The woman felt like Aaron was maybe a bit of a loner or even lonely, which made him sometimes get a little too personal with her, as if he just needed someone to talk to. Other students often claimed that Aaron was obsessed with his popularity and reviews on RateMyProfessors.com, and seemed almost addicted to reading the comments that students left, actively trying to guess which students made each comment. Classes at UNLV were canceled for the balance of the week following the shooting. Finals were scheduled for the following week, but on December 8, 2023, the university president, Keith Whitfield, made an announcement that in-person classes would be canceled for the remainder of the 2023 year due to the physical and emotional trauma the entire campus experienced. On the day of the shooting, NHL team Las Vegas Golden Knights stood in a moment of silence before the game versus the St. Louis Blues at T-Mobile Arena. Another 4 days after the shooting, the Golden Knights again honored the UNLV shooting victims and survivors in a ceremony before the game against the San Jose Sharks. During walk-ins, The Golden Knights players wore t-shirts that honored the victims and their families, and they wore special decals on their game helmets as well. The National Finals Rodeo was scheduled for December 7th, 2023, but the kickoff event was canceled and a moment of silence was held on December 8th, honoring the victims. On December 10th, 2023, the Las Vegas Raiders observed a moment of silence before their game against the Minnesota Vikings. The UNLV Foundation established scholarships in honor of each of the 3 shooting victims that were murdered at the hands of one of their very own peers. We all have the unique ability to help prevent such a catastrophic event from happening if we keep our eyes and ears open and never hesitate to report when something or someone just doesn't seem right. With the delicate balance of mental health reform, education, active shooter training, and common sense gun laws, we may one day realize the dream that there will be no more active shootings. We pray that love will prevail over hate.
Too many have died! We should say to ourselves, not one more!
In the meantime, we urge our listeners to stay aware of your surroundings and keep in touch with your loved ones. If you see something, say something. You never know how many lives you'll be saving. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Active Shooter, the podcast. Remember, if you see something, say something. There's no telling how many lives you may be saving. A big thank you to Darren Curtis, who composed some of the songs on our show. You can find him online at www.darrencurtismusic.com. Make sure to check us out on social media. You can find us on Facebook at Active Shooter, the podcast, and on Twitter at Podcast Active. Thank you, and be safe.